Hello guys! It has been a very long time since the last video. Before I jump into the topic of today, which you know is making sauerkraut, I thought I should acknowledge the fact that the kitchen, our backdrop, is different. So we are still living in the same place, but we actually did a little bit of a kitchen reno. So we're working in a beautiful updated kitchen, which has just been super lovely, super grateful for that. Florence is currently upstairs on a nap. So I thought today I would come to you guys with a little how to make sauerkraut video, because this one is just essential. We don't have it on our channel yet, I don't believe. And over the past few months, I've been really getting back into the habit of making our own sauerkraut. For a long time, I was back buying sauerkraut, which can get very expensive, whereas making sauerkraut at home is very affordable. You just need an organic cabbage. Like, this is huge, the size of my head essentially, and I think it cost about $4.50. It's for an organic cabbage compared to a tiny bottle of sauerkraut, which can be about, over $10. That is what we're going to be doing today. I'm going to jump straight into the video and let's go. Alrighty, let's talk what you'll need to get started in terms of equipment. So first up, you'll want a large fermentation jar. So I'm using a wide mouth mason jar in a ½ gallon size, so this holds a little under 2 liters. I find the easiest way to get a reliable ferment is to use an airlock system. So you can purchase airlock lids and attachments that fit onto a mason jar. You also want a fermentation weight. You'll need a large knife for slicing up the cabbage, or alternatively, you can use a mandolin, especially if you like really thin strips of sauerkraut. So this is much quicker and helps you to get really thin strips of cabbage, like really thin, consistent strips. For the sake of this video, I'm going to chop up the cabbage with a knife just to show you what that process looks like. But if you're making sauerkraut consistently, a mandolin could be a good investment. You'll also need a large bowl for the chopped cabbage, or like your largest cooking pot will also do, because there's going to be a lot of volume. You'll also need a kitchen scale that can zero. Then you'll need 1 head of cabbage, some salt. I'm using Celtic sea salt, and caraway. You can experiment with other spices. Juniper is also a really classic sauerkraut addition. And that's about it. Let's get started. So first things first, when it comes to fermentation, you want to make sure that you're working in a clean environment. To be on the safe side, you can sanitize your equipment. So here I'm just rinsing out my fermentation equipment with boiling water. Then I'm going to remove and save the outer leaves of our cabbage. So we'll be using these at the end of our fermentation. Then we're going to rinse our cabbage lightly and start chopping. So to chop up the full head of cabbage, I'm going to start by cutting it in half. Then I'm going to slice each half into thirds, making sure that I've got some of the stem in each slice. So I'm going to just kind of roughly chop off that stem, but I'm keeping a little bit just to make sure that it holds the cabbage together while we're chopping. Otherwise, this is going to be really difficult. I'm going to start slicing the cabbage. You can make it as thick or as thin as you like. Thinner is better in my opinion, but it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't want to overthink the process. Once you've chopped up all of your cabbage, we're just going to pop it into a large bowl or your largest cooking pot, whatever can fit this much cabbage, because there's going to be a lot of volume. I actually started with a metal bowl and then realized I needed a bigger pot. So we moved into a cast iron pot, and then we are just going to weigh our cabbage. So the cut cabbage for mine came to 1.792 kilograms. And this is going to help us to determine how much salt we need for the brine. So for the sauerkraut, we want to make a 2% brine. So this means we want the salt to be 2% of the weight of the cabbage. So we're going to measure the weight of our cabbage and then multiply that by 0.02 to get how many grams of salt we need. In this case, it came out to be about 36 grams of salt. So I'm just going to zero our scale and add in the salt. Then I'm just going to use clean hands to work the salt through the cabbage and kind of bruise up the cabbage a little bit, kind of give it a bit of a squish. Doesn't have to be perfect at this stage, because we're going to leave it for about 10 minutes with the salt tossed through there just to start drawing the water out of the cabbage. So after 10 minutes, we're going to keep working the cabbage with our hands, being really rough with it. We're kind of beating up the cabbage. So you can give it a few punches. We're going to squeeze it, just kind of really get in there and work the water out of the cabbage, because this is going to be our brine. At this point, you can add in your caraway or any other herbs and spices that you want to use. Then we're going to fill up our mason jar with our cabbage, packing it down firmly as you go. So you could use a tamper to help here, but in my opinion, your hands work just fine. So making sure that you're really pressing down that cabbage. You want to get in as much as possible. And once it's well packed, you want to make sure that the brine is fully covering the sauerkraut. We don't want any of the sauerkraut to be floating to the top. Then to help keep the sauerkraut under that brine, you can top with the leaf that we removed from earlier. So we're just going to fold this in and try and cover all of our sauerkraut, keep it down. And then we can also, to be extra safe, we can add in our fermentation weight, and once again that will help keep our sauerkraut underneath the brine. Then go ahead, fill your airlock with a little water and pop it on the top, and we are just about done. So we finally have our sauerkraut all packed. I actually had more cabbage than I could fit in this jar, so I'm going to do up a second jar. We've got our airlock on and we are ready to pop this in a nice, cool, dry place for about a week. So I'm going to keep ours in the laundry for about a week, maybe a little less than a week because it's quite warm. The temperature is going to affect how quickly it ferments, and it also depends on how tangy you like your sauerkraut. So I like a bit of medium tang. It's pretty hot here in Australia at the moment. We're in the Australian summer right now, so this will ferment pretty quickly. If you were in like Sweden, this would probably take longer. But I will be back in about a week's time to show you the end result. Alrighty, so it has been a week. We are a week later and our sauerkraut is all finished. So this is what it looks like now that it's all done. You'll notice that some more of the juices have kind of come up, so the brine has risen a little bit. If you notice during your fermentation that any of the sauerkraut has floated to the top, you can take off the lid and just kind of tamper that back down again. You just want to make sure that none of the sauerkraut is exposed to any air. But otherwise our sauerkraut is all finished. You can just take off the airlock and the lid and replace it with the normal lid and go straight into the fridge. I love to have sauerkraut on our breakfasts. It's great in salads, really good for gut health, as you guys would know. So if you haven't made your own sauerkraut before and you haven't ventured into fermented foods, I definitely recommend giving it a try. It's really easy, pretty foolproof to make. Don't be intimidated, give it a try. Let me know if you make your own sauerkraut down in the comments below. Otherwise, that wraps up today's video. Hope you guys have all been well, and hopefully I'll see you soon in another video. All right, bye guys.